Bienvenidos. Buenas tardes. My suegra would be so disappointed with my pronunciation. But I would definitely like to welcome you all to Union County College. On behalf of Dr. Margaret McMenamin, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our program. And as we continue our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, you are indeed in for a treat, as Madam Ambassador Reynoso is our keynote speaker today, and she is going to share her incredible story of success with all of us here today. And I say to our students, for all of you who at one point in time, if you ever doubt your journey, I say if you can see it, you can be it. And today you will be able to see someone who just epitomizes the journey that you, all of you, will be on, and that journey to success. And so this event is made possible through the generous support of our Union County Freeholders. We can't thank them enough. Dr. McMenamin speaks so highly of these individuals because they are our partners in your success. And so if you could give them a roaring applause, I would greatly appreciate it. Union County Freeholders would like to present a resolution to Ambassador Reynoso, and so I would like to call up Freeholder Estrada.
Colleagues, would you kindly come up for a second, Ms. Reynoso? First of all, on behalf of the Board of Chosen Freeholders, I'd like to take the time to welcome you. And I also wanted to thank Union County College and Dr. McMenamin for hosting today's Hispanic Heritage event. It is my honor to welcome all of you and recognize the contributions made and the important presence of Hispanics and Latinos in our communities. On behalf of my colleagues and the Freeholder Board, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Julissa Reynoso, presenting today's lecture and questions and answers on the challenges for new leadership. Ms. Reynoso's life story of public service is remarkable, and she is an inspirational model for the whole Union County community. Ms. Reynoso was born in the Dominican Republic and immigrated to the United States with her family, settling in the Bronx in New York. While finishing high school, she was encouraged to aim high and continue her education. She went on to earn a degree from Harvard and from University of Cambridge and the Columbia University School of Law. Amazing. Everything is possible in America, and I mean that sincerely. In addition to receiving awards and citations during her service as U.S. ambassador to Uruguay during the Obama administration, Ms. Reynoso has received Public Services Award from Columbia University, New York University, the North Star Fund, the Legal Aid Society, and the Hispanic National Bar Foundation, among others. She has also received the Order of the Quetzal from Guatemala and the Order of Del Valle from Honduras. Both are the highest honors awarded by each country, as she has been recognized as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum. Ms. Reynoso has written extensively on regulatory reform, community organizing, housing reform, immigration policy, and Latin American policy. She currently serves as an attorney at the law firm of Winston & Strawn at their New York office. She is a shining example of the strength we all gain when every person is valued and encouraged to reach their fullest potential. It is my honor to welcome Ms. Julissa Reynoso, and please join me to give her a great round of applause. Now, here's some water.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the Freeholders. I'm very honored to be here, and thank you to Union County College, the personnel, the staff, the leadership, Dr. Hargrove, And John Prescott, who was the one that initiated the contact with me a while back. I'm very happy to be here, to be present this month here in your part of town. I primarily do my work across the river in New York City, where I live and practice law. But I have been given the opportunity to serve the country in various parts of the world. And I worked with the State Department for several years under Secretary Clinton and President Obama. Now I'm back in private practice and teaching at Columbia University. But I think the primary objective is to tell you a bit about myself and give you some ideas of what I've learned in my journey, to the extent it can be helpful to you as you all young folks are looking at opportunities and considering your options going forward. I, as mentioned, was born in the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean, and I came to the United States as a very young child, to the South Bronx. My parents were undocumented for many, many years until they were amnestied by President Ronald Reagan, which was the last amnesty or immigration reform, of comprehensive immigration reform that the country took on ever in its recent history. And we are in these times of bipartisan of conflict amongst political types in Washington. It is a note of reference that it took a strong Republican to push through reform of immigration rules and allowed for so many people to stay in the country, good people who had migrated with the best of intentions and had contributed to the domestic economies, to allow people like my family to stay. And that's why I'm here today with you. The Bronx taught me a lot of things, including how to be as tough as can be, and when I get upset at my firm, people say, "Oh, she's going to Bronx on us," and that is something that I'm sure folks here in Union County and in Jersey can attest to as well. I mean, that character, that building of that persona, that the streets and these neighborhoods where we grew up in, they're often marginalized or are referred to as marginalized, tough. Give you a perspective on how to solve problems and how to talk to people and deal with conflict that most institutions will never teach you. And so I'm very blessed to have grown up in some of the toughest neighborhoods in the city, or at that time the country, and go on to fancy institutions of academics like Harvard and the University of Cambridge. When I got to those institutions, it was not too tough, too hard, because I had really graduated from the streets of New York. I was blessed to have been given the opportunity to work for the United States and the government of the United States, and for all of you. It is at one point, and for many, when I was growing up in the Bronx and then in university, I was always considered the other, or a minority, a foreigner, an immigrant, which I still am. But the wonderful thing about this country is that you can be a foreigner and a minority or the other and still now get to the point where you actually represent the whole place, including distinct places, in the Midwest, the West Coast, places I've never even been to. But as a U.S. ambassador and working for the U.S. State Department and the federal government, I represent everybody. So when a foreign government leader came to me, or when I was in the mission in Uruguay as ambassador, the folks that looked at me as the United States, not as Julissa from the Bronx. I had to speak to the U.S. global interests, from security to trade to political interests, and our objectives and values were a mark of what it meant to be an American and meant to be a representative of this country. In that regard, I represented everyone in this room, even though you never met me or knew who I am or what I was doing, for the most part. So that is an amazing opportunity that I had, and I think, frankly, after looking closely at the rest of the world, from even the most advanced countries that you can consider in Europe or even Asia and the like, No other country can give you that channel to grow and to participate and really have a global impact. So I guess the first real message is my story is an interesting story. I'm sure a lot of you all have similar stories from your parents or your own trajectory coming from different countries or from tough neighborhoods and the like. And you all, you're here because you have ideas and you have goals and you have plans. So that's a fantastic place to be. And you're blessed to be able to live in this country where you can actually exercise those plans and objectives, especially for people who do not have a lot of resources or have not had the greatest of opportunities. Here you can do that. But I guess what I'm urging everyone to consider is going beyond just the immediate surrounding of being in college at this point and going forward, hopefully, to do more study, but to also consider serving the country. And serving the country is not just being an ambassador, and God, I hope many ambassadors are here, but also serving the country in other ways. And it could be from the private sector or it can be in the public sector. But consider yourself privileged to have the opportunity, all of us in some way, to serve the country, because not only is it great and it's a lot of fun and you're continuously learning, but you also have a tremendous responsibility to do so. And I'll tell you why. When I was growing up in New York City, I said, wow, this is tough. What's going on here? There's so much poverty. There's so much inequality. There's so much injustice. And there is. But we all have a lot of power to change it here. We all have a lot of power to organize, to agitate, to deal with politics if we wish, and to tackle problems in the public in a public way that in most places on earth do not exist. But we also have a responsibility to the world, and I did not realize that as much until I got to the State Department. I mean, I come from New York City, and you all come from New Jersey. These states are very diverse, and we know people from all over the planet. Our neighbors are from X country. Our classmates are from other countries. And it's all coming together here in these states, which are fantastic places of extreme diversity and knowledge, and the global community coming together and distinct parts of this country in such a unique way. That is an experience that we all should be grateful for. But that experience also means that we're connected to the rest of the world. And we have a tremendous opportunity to make sure the United States and all its greatness and the best of us can really be out there and showcased to the rest of the world. So through service, not only your community service, but also serving your country in some way, we really have the ability to influence what goes on in the rest of the world. And so I know a lot of us, and a lot of you, and I for myself, did not know what a U.S. ambassador really did. It seemed like a nice job with people. If I watched a lot of movies, people would have cocktail parties and get to know fancy people, and usually they were older white males. That was the image. In fact, I went to some meetings where people were looking at me thinking I was from the other delegation, meaning that I was on the other side of the conversation. I was in charge of the negotiations with the Cuban government for all the U.S. State Department. There were instances where the Cubans thought I was with them. But I was like, no, I'm the American. And so, the image, the profile of people like us is not something that I think has really reached the optimal point of representation at many levels. But at the State Department, where you all, at least my experience had been mostly through books and movies, it is really the image of the United States to the rest of the world. You can't get more American than that in terms of the exposure to the rest of the continent. In the case of Latin America and the Caribbean, where I served and when I had to negotiate things and deals, it was looking at your cousin. It was like looking at your family, and they're looking at, well, where's the American diplomat that's supposed to be, I'm supposed to be talking to? And I said, you know what? Surprise, it's me. And so, and at first it's a little disorienting for everyone. But the great thing is that then you're like, wow, we have a lot in common, because there is a uniform and a coherent reality and relationship that joins most of us, especially in this continent, that allows for even greater dialogue and ability to collaborate and solve complex problems. So that was an advantage for me. And in that role, I also was able to fully understand the amount of power that this country has to influence and to get things done in all parts of the world. We all live in our daily routine trying to solve many problems that we face and our family faces, and trying to go to school and deal with homework and plans and jobs. But when you are thinking of this country and your role in it, and as citizens of this place, you have to, I think, also consider the tremendous responsibility we have to the rest of the world. And that is unique to our position here in this country. And as people of color or minorities or Latinos or just folks from this great state, I think you all have a special responsibility to go out there and ensure that you understand what the United States is doing in the world. At minimum, understand it. Understand that we're at war in distinct countries of the world. Understand that we do a lot of development assistance and help a lot of people in a lot of countries in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. Understand what NATO is. Understand what it means to deal with Russia. Understand why China is an important player in everything we do in terms of trade and politics. Understand that our biggest trade partner is Canada, and our second biggest trade partner is Mexico. And why we're fighting with Mexico when we are its biggest trade partner, I don't understand. But at minimum, we have the responsibility to understand our relations with these parts of the world, because guess what? No matter who's president and no matter what happens, it's still the greatest and most important and powerful country in the universe, and it will be that way for a very, very long time. And it's our responsibility as folks who participate in it and vote, sometimes don't vote, but we should vote, and get people involved in a way that really we are taking care of not only ourselves, but really having a remarkable influence in the rest of the planet. And that's something that is not only a great thing, but it's a tremendous responsibility. Every time there is a budget passed for defense, every time there is a missile going over some country, every time there is a meal served in a sub-Saharan African country because some child needs food and we pay for it, it's your responsibility to at least understand it and to know that it's coming somehow or another from us. So I tell you that because I had the opportunity to follow that journey. I'm back in New York City practicing law, love my job, but every day I wake up and think, what can I do today to make sure I understand what's going on in the world, because I'm partly responsible for it. And I urge you to do the same in your own personal daily routine here as students, but also please continue to work on building your careers to be able to serve and at minimum understand who we are in the world and why we're doing what we do. With that, I would love to answer any questions you all might have, and I hope questions or commentary are very much welcome. So thank you.
Does anyone have a question? I have a mic, so if you have a question,
I hope
just
you all
raise
have
your hand.
questions. Don't be shy. We have questions, yes.
We'll stop here and then I'll.
Thank you for those words, Madam Ambassador. I have a question about when you leave being ambassador, do you have a relationship with the next ambassador, and how does that kind of
Right.
transition work?
So I was a political ambassador, so I was appointed as a Democrat to the administration. And so before I was an ambassador, I was working in the State Department in Washington. As a political ambassador, you usually go home after that. If I was a career ambassador, I would stay in the system and go to become ambassador somewhere else or keep serving in some way. Because of just because I thought it was a good thing to do, I definitely had a conversation, continue to have conversations with the ambassador serving right now to make sure if she has any questions. Obviously, I lived it, and so I know what to do and what not to do. You also have to be careful because you don't want to step on people's toes or be too out there. But definitely, there's normally a transition, and people do share know-how. It's easier to do it when you're in the system, meaning in your career, because you're there. It's harder when you actually leave and move somewhere else and get out of the public service. But yes, there's usually some continuum in terms of dialogue with the prior ambassador.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. What are the opportunities, some of the opportunities for our students in like a job like
Absolutely.
the State Department?
So everyone should, the heart, let's say this, the State Department is one of the greatest institutions anyone can work in. Anybody interested in everything from being a diplomat, ambassador, to working security in an embassy, to dealing with trade policy, to being stamping passports in some consulate in some remote location. If you like languages, if you like different cultures, if you enjoy traveling the world for free and getting paid pretty well for it, and having a lifelong tenure. Most State Department people stay there for most of their career. It's a remarkable professional track. Work for the State Department. Apply. You have to take a test if you want to join the Foreign Service, which is it's a hard test. But there's also other jobs that are much more that are not as difficult in terms of getting in and require just applying and submitting your information. And they're always looking for applicants, especially diverse applicants who have languages or diverse experience that they can use. It's a fantastic agency, but don't only think of the State Department. It's one agency. Think of the Department of Defense. Think of the Department of Homeland Security. Think of the Department of Energy. There are federal agencies all over, and all of them touch the world. They all have something to do with foreign policy. The Department of Defense, I gotta say, is the biggest agency. I know people think, oh, I'm not gonna join the military. You don't have to be a military person to work for the Department of Defense. There's a lot of civilian jobs in the Department of Defense, and folks like yourselves can definitely look into jobs there. There's also the Department of Justice. Not all justice people are prosecutors. In fact, most just people working in the Department of Justice are investigators. The Drug Enforcement Agency is part of the Department of Justice, the FBI. So, there's also the CIA, which is, the CIA. People watch a lot of movies. But it's also an extremely important agency, and people, again, need interesting, thoughtful young people to look at these jobs because they're really, amazing jobs, but also we need good people to serve our country in these positions. We have a couple of folks here.
Welcome, and we're very fortunate to have you today.
Thank you.
As a professor at the college, I would like to know what skill sets are you looking for in young people who want to test out the waters before they apply for those full-time jobs
Right.
that we could offer here that perhaps we don't?
Yeah.
So looking forward, what would you suggest?
Right. Well, I think obviously language skills are very important. If you folks here who have parents or family that speak other languages besides English, don't use that, exploit that. Make sure you manage your language skills and keep at it, and don't just drop it, or worse, mix it with yours in a way that you dilute both languages. I mean, how many Spanglish? I mean, it's cool, it's cute, but I'm a big fan of keeping things pure. So read Spanish language if Spanish is your home your home language. Speak and learn it properly, because that's how you're going to communicate with the rest of the world. Most countries in the world do not speak Spanglish; they speak Spanish. So read the newspaper, read books, practice with your parents. and any other languages. That's very important. And every day there's a greater need for folks to really speak more than one language in the federal government, because we're just dealing with so many foreign issues. In terms of management of resources, it's also very important. There's always a need for people who understand budgets and accounting and things of that nature, that are not just people like me who are lawyers and can know how to talk. You need people with technical skills that can really manage everything from an embassy's budget to how to deal with some foreign assistance. Also, people who know about technology. I mean, there's always a need for analysts, IT personnel that can help sort out problems. And that's not just because it's, obviously there's a great need for it everywhere. The federal government requires a whole lot of technical people to help with tech questions, engineering questions, real hardcore problem solving that I'm sure you all folks here can provide, if you don't provide it already.
Today's a great day. We're really fortunate to have you up here.
Thank you.
I'm the treasurer of the Model UN at the school.
Okay.
And one of the things I wanted to know was what inspired you to become an ambassador, and not only what inspired you, but like who were your mentors throughout, and if you have any words of advice for someone who wants to be an ambassador like yourself.
Well, I got lucky. I was practicing law in New York. I became close friends with. I started working in Secretary Clinton's campaign when she ran for president the first time, and I became very close to her team. So when she lost, I said, "Well, that was that." I was thinking of going to work in the executive branch in some way. When she became Secretary of State, she and her chief of staff asked me to join them, and I said, "Okay," but I really didn't know what they wanted me to do. The good thing about being a lawyer, which I'm a big fan of promoting as well, is that you get skill sets that are pretty manageable and can be put to use in many types of scenarios. So, because you're basically taught how to solve problems and how to learn quickly things that come to you. So that skill set as a lawyer, as an attorney, really helped me kind of navigate the State Department, the problems that came to me. I was sent off to become an ambassador. Secretary Clinton thought I could do it. I thought I could. I was too young, and she said, "You're not that young." So I did it because she believed in me, and she took a chance. I really didn't have a lot of experience. I was young. I was the youngest female ambassador in U.S. history. Funny enough. And so and I said, okay. And it's a very male-dominated space, especially when you're dealing with Latin America, which is, for better or worse, very old school in terms of the leadership in governments and how they interact with women. But I got it, and then I did it. So it was really people believing in me and giving me the opportunity, but being prepared to take that opportunity and take it and do well with it. So the training and the education was, it's the minimum foundation for getting these opportunities. Any other question? I think we have two more over here.
Did you have a question?
I do. Hi. Thank you very much for joining us. This has really been very enlightening. A number of our students look for internships, look for mentors.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you had any recommendations about how to get internships or entry-level positions, mentors.
Yes.
That would be very helpful.
Well, so if folks who are interested in the foreign policy universe, it's difficult when you're not in Washington. But we're all next to New York City, which has the United Nations, and a lot of the missions, every country has a mission at the UN, and the ambassador can speak to it. Carlos is here. And they look for interns all the time because they want cheap labor, primarily. But it's great for them and it's great for you because you learn the skill, you learn what they do, and it's a way to build your resume and then go on to the next better position. So I'm a big fan of people, especially young people who maybe don't have families to support, etc., to go out there and knock on the door of the mission to, look at some abstract country, and they have an office in New York City that needs people to help them pick, open mail, take calls, or even more interesting work. But that's something to keep in mind. I also think, working for your congressperson or your senators, whoever, because that also, most of those people have some contact with, obviously, these are federal representatives, and they have contact and needs related to foreign policy in some way or another, even if it's some constituent that has a visa problem. Those are things I think matter at the end of the day in building your resume and your skill set.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
There was somebody else?
Thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank you, Ambassador, for your inspirational conversation and sharing your experience. My name is Carlos Garcia. I'm a former permanent representative of El Salvador to the United Nations, and currently I'm serving as Secretary General of the United Nations Association of El Salvador. So I'm glad to hear that this university is also having United Nations Association. Thank you very much.
Everybody needs an intern.
I need an intern too. No, I would like just post a couple of questions, if you like. One is that very, very interested in hear your approach in terms how being as a person coming from Dominican Republic became an ambassador of the United Nations, of the United States, and as you very well explained this journey, and I'm very, very happy to hear that. But I was curious when you mentioned something that I think is very strategic for many people in the world today, which is to understand how you've been having different wars in your persona and your character, and then understand the values and the interests of the United States and how to project those interests, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And in that relationship, of course, I understand there is a kind of two ways. One, of course, the objective interest, and the second one, the subjective personality. How do you do that? I mean, it was very difficult in a way for you to put together these two different perspectives. As for example, when you mentioned that the United States have a permanent interest with Canada, for example, and Mexico,
Yeah.
but you don't understand why we are fighting in a way with Mexico. That kind of approach is very interesting. That's question number one. And question number two, based on your experience and your personal approach to the Department of State, I quite found interested to see how in a country where it's become or made a great nation based on migrants, the relationship with migrants still a conflict in the world today, and how we can sort out this issue. Thank you.
So in terms of the different kind of personas, personality disorder or whatever, I am, I think every person has different identities. I mean, just because some of us have political identities in the sense that we're Hispanic or African American doesn't mean that other people who are not that do not have other identities too. And we all carry stuff in every conversation and in every position we take. I guess that those identities and those experiences form how we look at the world. It gives us, it gives us more empathy. Some of us gives us more understanding. I hope that's what happened with me. But obviously, we all have baggage, better or worse, that influences how we behave and how we interact with different people. So that's how I see it. I don't see it as I'm better than whatever because I have this experience. It's just different. With respect to the migration issue, I mean, it's very loaded, question because obviously I have my point of view. That said, as a person who represented the U.S. government, I have to say that there's always it's not a, there's always something. And there's always the security issue. There's always every country has, as you know, representing El Salvador, every country has the right to manage its physical borders. And how you do it in a way that it's a balance with humane measures, and at the same time can ensure security and ensure proper minimum management of process of movement of people. It's something that I think a lot of us have to also manage and understand. And people who are like us, I think most of us who are pro immigration reform also have to understand that piece of it in order to be really logical and reasonable in our way we handle those problems. So it's not just a blanket kind of call for X without understanding that, where other people are coming from, which is so important in any conversation. As you know, as a diplomat, you have to understand people's understanding and try to get in their heads. And people are, for the most part, not crazy. People, for the most part, project whatever they think is the best thing for them and for their interests. And so that understanding those equities, I think, are important to get to a better place. I think this is the last question.
Yes. Good evening. I'm
Yes.
Dr. Rapalo. I'm the Dean of Business, Social Sciences, and History. Thank you so much for your presence and for sharing your knowledge. I do have two questions, though.
Yeah.
Having had the privilege to interact with so many leaders in the world, what leadership trait you actually nourish the most? And the other question is, what soft skill would you like to share with our students that help you to move in your career?
Right. So I think they're both related, right? Because for me, I was, one of my favorite people was the person I learned the most from was Secretary Clinton, and her ability to have empathy with whoever she was talking to, from the president of X country to the cleaning lady in the hallways of the State Department. So really understanding people, where they're at, and the importance of everyone in the structure is key to really managing an institution and being a proper leader and giving everyone their due respect for what they're trying to accomplish day to day. So I think for anyone really moving forward in their career or their life, we all obviously are not no one is perfect, and we all make mistakes, and we all, forget sometimes. But really knowing where you're at and where other people are at and the opportunities you had, maybe the other people didn't have. But understanding that whole situation, keeping yourself grounded, I think is key to moving forward in a way that really makes you a better person and gets the work done too. The higher I went and moved up, the more I realized when I was younger and didn't have access to all these fancy people, I was like, wow, they must be super smart. They must be so amazing. And then you meet them and you're like, he's not that smart. So you're like wondering, how the hell did that guy get there? But obviously there are very, very smart people in government, but there are also people who got there. And so you come to realize, you're like, you know what? If that guy or that woman can do it, I can do it. Because it's not that deep. Then you realize that most of us are just winging it. Not in a bad way, but we're just like trying to make do every day with what we can and work as hard as you can, hopefully. But it's not, you basically can figure out most things. There's not some club of really, really special people who have really, really deep kind of scientific or critical minds that the rest of us can't understand. That's what I figured out. And so that brought me back to that can be anybody, It's just a lot of it has to do with opportunity or having the right last name in some countries. Anyway, I think that's it. Thank you. Oh, you had a question? Oh, I'm sorry. One last question. Apologies.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you end up in Harvard, though?
That was just work. That was not because of my last name. No, you just gotta, you have to study, hit those books. You gotta read, you have to love reading, because that's most of what I did then and most of what I do now as a lawyer. and you have to really create a discipline for yourself of sitting home and working and studying and preparing for tests. I mean, that's discipline all the way. You could do it. All right, thank you, everybody.